Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Doubting Tim Show. I'm here with my friends Chris and Isaiah, and we are here to have a discussion amongst ourselves about topics in society that may or may not have direct answers within the Word, within the Bible, and kind of have a discourse that we want to share with you about our own experiences in our lives and some of the answers that we have discovered and found out. And the way that we're going to hopefully bring this to you is I'm sort of going to lead the discussion by playing as like the commoner. I'm the newest saved member of this group. I was saved roughly 4 weeks ago, and my life has just been great since. And these two gentlemen played a big part in that, and they have been part of my life. Chris has been my friend since seventh grade. I met Isaiah through him when I lived with Chris in Brockport, and life has just been great since then. And we've kind of had this bond. We've done some events together, and we've just recently started having more and more of a dialogue and a conversation about it. And we thought, what better way to better further our own walks, our own knowledge, have that discourse with each other, but to engage the community. And it was something that when I thought of, a type of missionary work, I'm in graduate school right now. I'm currently living in Ohio as a graduate student, and I don't have the opportunity to travel to all these great places, but I have a webcam and I have the internet and I have two great friends. So why not bring that to you? So we're going to take turns. So like I said, I'm Tim. I'm a graduate student in Ohio. We'll go to each of them. They'll kind of give you a little bit of who they are, and then we'll start our conversation for the day. Chris.
Um, as Tim said, I'm Chris. I grew up with Tim in Oneonta, New York, um, and I live now in North Carolina. I'm married, have a beautiful young daughter. I work at the State Library of North Carolina right now, um, and I'm just very excited to have an opportunity to um, have a little bit of witness and just share my faith. That has been a huge part of my life throughout my life. And so I'm just excited for the opportunity to have these discussions and hopefully have a little bit of a positive impact
Mhm.
today.
I'm
Zay.
Isaiah. I will commonly be referred to as Zay,
That's
which
your
I
name.
love. Yeah. When I met Chris's parents, they didn't know who Isaiah was because I'd only been referred to as Zay. They thought my legal name was Zay, and then his mom was
True.
upset with him, like, "You didn't tell me his name was Isaiah." Anyway, uh, yeah, I'm Zay. I live in Michigan now. I'm a little closer to Tim, but I've known Chris since college. I met Tim soon after. I was just realizing it's been like 7 years since me and Tim met. Like it seemed, anyways.
It's a
We're
long
all
time.
getting
Yeah,
old.
it's been a
Um,
lot longer since that we realized, I think, which is not
but
a bad
yeah,
thing.
I'm a pastor here. I feel called to ministry. I have gone to I completed Bible school and went to ministry school as well. Um, I love the word. I love discussing things and having the conversation. I've really appreciated Tim's openness in this process, and part of why I love the idea of doing this. There are a lot of people who seem to be afraid to have conversations about the hard things, especially with Christians. And Tim didn't have that with us because of having a relationship, and it did open a lot of really good conversations. So we're looking to kind of imitate that, do it again, and ongoing ways here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. I definitely think that just from everything that had happened and for me, it is nice to be able to have that conversation and to ask. What we're going to hope to do is be very blunt and not in a manner of being not necessarily be disrespectful, but to be blunt as in these are the questions people have, and this is just the way that the world works, and we need to deal with it. And how do we deal with it? And so, kind of going with the topic of my salvation, having happened just recently, we're going to kind of talk about our own experiences, our own sort of salvations, our own processes, and wherever that kind of winds up, that winds up. And at the end of this video, we will introduce to you the topic for next week's discussion, should we find one, and hopefully we will. And we are going to separately each find a passage or multiple passages, information, and kind of keep that to ourselves until next week, where we will bring that to the table and see, did we find the same information to answer the question? Did we find different information and have that discourse? So I'm going to turn it over to Chris because Chris is kind of the beginning of all of this. He's the beginning my salvation, and then he's going to meet Zay later on, and we can tie him into that. So we'll go to Chris if you want to kind of talk about the beginning.
Well, I guess I can talk about that. I I grew up in a Christian household, and I experienced just a lot of the benefit and the benefit of living the Christian lifestyle in what I saw from my family and the life that my family had and the love that we shared and um, the things that we did together. And I saw a lot of people around me and the struggles they had with their families, anger, resentment, selfishness in relationships that caused a lot of friction and all those kinds of problems that, obviously we're family. We had those troubles, um, but it really was not bad at all. I had a great life growing up, really supportive, loving parents. My brother is one of the best people I know. Um,
He's a good man. Ken is a real good man.
uh, we spent a lot of time in church with the church community. So a lot of my influences were very positive. Um, so, through all of that, as I said, I definitely saw the benefits and the truth of how living a Christian life um, can create such a great atmosphere within a family and within a life. Um, but like I said before, that my perception of it did cause problems as I got into, I guess, the end of high school, going into college. Um, One of the things for me going into college, I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I had no, I went um, initially for chemical engineering. I've studied, you know, I think now it's been 5 different degrees at 4 different colleges. So, you know, that, um, just that feeling of not knowing,
Right.
combined with my previous perception of needing to perform well to be accepted by God and to be accepted as a Christian, um, just started to cause a lot of real doubts in my mind. Um, and so that throughout my college years created a lot of guilt, a lot of fear, a lot of hiding, um, that then made me start to kind of question and really have doubts of like, is all of this that I've been taught true? Is this real?
Right.
Why is this here? Why do I feel this way? Um, and that brought me to a point when I was at Bible college with Zay. Um, that was the third college that I attended, um, and it was honestly a little bit of like just kind of a last ditch on my part. Like, I'm gonna try this and I'm gonna hope it does something because this is where I've been. Um, so in that college with Zay, um, I had a lot of really good, obviously, good talks with him about things, and we got close. And it came to a point where there was one night I was, we were just in his dorm room, laying there, and I told him, I just don't know if it's true. Um, and we didn't really talk about it a lot that night. He just, he kind of listened and said, that's really hard. And but what he did do was I guess he told his dad about it, who is a pastor and who's another man I really respect, and his perception of Christianity. And his dad actually came. I don't know if it was that weekend or the next weekend. I mean, I think it was already planned that he was going to be coming, but he came, and his Zay's dad and I went out to lunch and just had a talk, and he really helped me understand that my perception at the time was of this performance-based faith that I felt that I needed to be a certain person in order for God to love me and in order for me to have my salvation and be a Christian. And so just that, and he helped me see that that was my mindset and recognize just kind of the backwards quality of that. Um,
Right.
and so from there, you know, I understood that. I tried to work on changing my mindset. I kind of freed myself a little bit from some of the guilt. Um, I definitely put a lot more faith and trust in God for the rest of the plan of my life. And from there, you know, I got a job at an outdoor leadership place where my brother was working. That was just such a wonderful experience and so kind of freeing of like, oh hey, I don't need to do all of these things like college and specific career and all of these things to be seen as, you know, what how who I'm supposed to be.
Right.
Um, and so just from that point, I have uh, lived much more on faith in that, you know, God has what's best for me. God loves me, and if I live into that and trust in that, things will God will watch over me. And you know, as long as I live, I'm not worried about how am I doing, and instead I am saying, you know, God, what can I do today? What show me today what you need me to do.
Right.
um, and that has, you know, led me to a place to where I've met my wife. I've, you know, have a family, I do have a career now that is a great career that I really enjoy, and um, I am at a place where I've, you know, been impacting people for God, and it's just been
Dude, that's really awesome.
really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a question because it's kind of going on to the topic, and this will give Isaiah something to kind of discuss about. You mentioned perception and how your perception sort of changed here and there. And the perception that, for clarification, that we're talking about for the audience is this perception of salvation. And so, if you could explain where your perception of what salvation was, because you mentioned performance based, and you're kind of always, which is a little bit, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but feels, and here's like more like the fear side, right? Performance based, like I got to do these things, I got to be this person. And you say your perception changes. Has your perception of salvation changed? And did you feel like there was a moment in your life where you finally understood what that meant, and everything was just kind of like this aha moment?
um I don't know that it was a specific kind of aha moment, but my perception definitely changed. um you know, through a lot of that earlier part of my life, you know, I understood the intellectual side of salvation in that, you know, this is what the Bible tells me about what salvation is. Um, but I didn't, you know, I didn't really feel that I had salvation, because in, you know, in my mind, it was like, well, if I'm really saved and if I really have repented and dedicated myself to God, then I shouldn't be having all of these struggles. You know, it should not be so hard for me to avoid temptation and to, uh, you know, to avoid sin if I was really saved. So that was kind of my perception of, was like, in my mindset,
That's not a bad question either. I've talked to a lot of people
yeah,
we've said that same thing.
you know, in my mind it was like, yeah, I know I'm saved. I've, you know, I've said that prayer. I have lived this life this way, um, but it just doesn't feel like it because I have all this guilt and, um, you know, fear of if I really am or not. And so having that talk with Zay's dad, um, we talked about the worship song "In Christ Alone" and that how it really spoke to me, and he kind of worked me through like what that meant. Of it is actually in Christ alone that all of the salvation and all of the faith, uh, you know, that is where the foundation is. And so it was, like I said, it was not a specific moment, but it was kind of in that time of after we had that conversation, and I went through a little bit, you know, a few months of that, just coming to the point of, you know, recognizing that Jesus loves me and has loved me
Yeah, he
my
does.
entire life as a sinner, in all of the struggles, in all of the temptation, and that he understands I have struggles and I have temptations, and that as long as my heart is set on him, and as long as I have set my heart and my life in front of Him and laid it at His feet, that it doesn't, from there, it doesn't really matter how I struggle. I am saved and I am loved. And um, so my life has been a lot more peaceful and joyful since that time, not worrying about all of those things. Um, so
That's awesome. Yeah. All right, Zay. Why don't you fill us in? That's pretty. There's a lot from Chris. He kind of gave you some room too. He kind of left off as he meets you. So tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? What do you do?
Who
What
am
got you
I?
here?
Who am I? Well, I would definitely say that my view of salvation has also changed as I've grown. My dad has been in ministry since before I was born, and my parents are both pastors now. So I too grew up around Christianity, around the Word, around God. But even my entire family's view on who God is, what salvation and relationship with Him really looks like, has changed throughout our life. So, to summarize that, yeah, when I met Chris was kind of, it was an interesting time in my life because I too was in a performance type of perception of who God wanted me to be. And we've used the term performance, but to define what that means, it basically is I only get when I do. So I get love when I do this, or I get acceptance when I reach this standard, or I get whatever it is, affirmation or encouragement only when I'm doing well, or etc. That sort of thing. So there's a lot of doing involved. It has everything to do with what I'm doing, my behaviors, and my ability to control myself, and very little to do with my actual spirit, soul, inner man, and how my feelings and my connection with God, because it's all driven by what can I do. So I went through that transition as well into what I would call relationship versus performance. And relationship, true relationship based on love, is not based on performance, but instead is you get love. That's it. In spite of what you do, or if you're doing well, it's not actually limited or defined by your behaviors. It is given as a gift, and that is what true love is, right? And we see that's what people want in a relationship, with a significant other or from their parents or with their siblings even.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone wants a relationship where love is given, and it's given to a person, not to what a person does or their job or their money or whatever.
Right. It's not out of spite. It's not in return for a good. It's I love you.
I love you.
Period.
period.
Wedding vows, right, are always beautiful. They always have to do with this is all that I'm going to give to you. All that I am is yours, no matter what, and forever, right? And we love to hear that, and people tear up, and it's because our hearts long for that connection because we're meant to have it with God. And so
We were built that way.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so I believe that that's, we were all built for relationship, specifically with our Creator, right? He created us with relationship in mind, and sin separates us from connection with Him, and it is only through Jesus that we get to have that connection again. And
Yeah.
once you have that connection, though, there's a lot of sin that no longer has a right to keep you from anything, but your choices still have the power to put you wherever you choose to be.
Yeah.
And so there is importance on what you do, on what you choose, but it's not driven by trying to earn something. It's actually driven by love. And there's a lot in the Bible that's, explains that, this freedom that's in Christ and in salvation, but how yet we're still meant to do these good things, but we're not doing it because we have to. We're doing it fueled by the love of God, not to earn the love of God.
Well, yeah, and as like a saying, I'm so thankful for what you've done for me that I want to obey what you have told me because, I want to fulfill that. I want to fulfill what you have put in me through your love.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And so I would say one of the most important things for me has been in my adult life, since meeting Chris, since going through Bible school and ministry school and all that, has been learning identity. and my source of identity being God and not other people or just myself. Because if your identity is based on what others define you as, you will always probably feel really bad about yourself. If your identity is based on what you perceive, it's very limited because
Yeah.
and anyone who's been around for any amount of time knows that although you know yourself better than anyone else, you don't actually know yourself 100%.
Right.
Like you're always
True.
learning and discovering who you are and what, and like God is the only one who actually knows that, and so He gets to tell me who I am, and when He's my source for that, it frees me to do what He's called me to do
Yes.
because like I'm His son. He
Yeah.
loves me. He calls me a leader. I get to be a leader. It's not because I'm trying really hard. I already am.
Right.
If He tells me, if like I feel called to ministry, right? I want to be a pastor. It's not because I feel like I have to. He's already showed me like this is who you
Right.
are.
He's laid that pathway out for you. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just stepping into it, and that takes so much like whatever angst and fear and control out of the mix because now it's not on me.
Yeah.
It's already in me because He's placed it there, and so that's been one of the coolest part of like walking out my salvation, I would say, I guess, after the fact. I too had like a process where like, you know, at 4 I sat with my mom and I prayed a prayer and I believed I was saved. But learning what my relationship with God really was and what my salvation really meant was a long process. Hi, Morgan.
Said hi.
So
Morgan.
I've really appreciated that, and I appreciate our talks too. And,
Yeah. Doing real good.
I'll see. I'll let you go.
That makes it to me, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's all you, Tim.
Okay. So I'll try to keep it a little brief. So I am the newest saved member of our group, and it's very significant and important because I'm 29 years old. I have lived my whole life one way with certain stereotypes in place, certain foundations in place, certain walls in place. That now I am walking through the process, luckily, very luckily, and blessed with these two gentlemen and some friends that we'll meet later on, to try to not knock all the walls down, not just say, you know what, we're rebuilding everything, but to say which walls need to come down, which things need to be reinterpreted, and how do we need, like, what parts of my life change, and how do they change for the better? And a lot of that in the relationship with God and with Jesus is letting Him guide me in doing that, right? And being, not just saying it, but really inside myself finding and discovering, like, I am willing to free myself and let you make these changes. And if parts of me need to go, then they're gone. And I'm not going to resist it. I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to let these things get pulled aside. Growing up, my mom was religious. She's Christian. You know, I got baptized, Presbyterian, I think, for whatever that means. And then my dad was always like the science-based, like the kind of doubting, like, you know, and so my mom just kind of never really put her 2 cents in. We never really got dragged to church or anything. We just kind of grew up through science and grew up through these things. And right about 7th grade, I meet Chris. Chris kind of comes into my life. He, you know, does all these things with me, tells me, you know, talks to me, and is just sort of always there of saying, hey, if you ever need somebody, like, I have this relationship, you know, I can help you out. And at first I'm like, this guy's weird. Like, I don't know, be like this, right? But like, I love hanging out with him, right? It's weird, right? He's a weird dude. Like, I love hanging
I've
out with him.
always been weird, and I'm proud of it.
Exactly. And I'm discovering that I have that exact same weirdness, and it is not out of, it is for a reason. And so, kind of like fast forwarding, I've had lots of moments in my life that people refer to as coincidences that weren't coincidences, that had brought me to a moment where I was very, very close. And like, even having conversations with Isaiah, having conversations with Chris, I was always so close to having the outside match the inside, to coming forth and saying, I think you guys are right, and I want to know more. And my pride just got in the way. I couldn't do it. I was like, nah, I lived my whole life this way. I'm sticking to it. Well, in a moment where I was very seriously questioning and very seriously asking and wondering and believing, you know what, I think this is true. This is right. This is what I want to do. I've been living my life the wrong way. I get sent out to Lourdes in Ohio, Catholic University. They're the gray wolves, which the wolf was my favorite animal. These are of no, you know, no coincidence to me. I go through a lot of struggles of finding myself and attempting to use a lot of the skills that I've learned and, you know, get a bunch of walls put up. And then finding a job where I have right now, I'm a lead preschool teacher for 4 and 5-year-olds in Perrysburg, Ohio, at a YMCA, and meeting an individual there that just really fascinated me, really intrigued me, and shared many of the values that Chris and Isaiah have. And it was something that I was missing out here and was longing for. And kind of got drawn there. Went to church with her, and then was able to put my pride aside and say, I want to do this, talk with the pastor. I also said that prayer, but interesting part of the salvation, the conversation with us is I had asked Chris and Isaiah, like, what is that? We hear this term of people being saved, but what is that? And so before I kind of talk about that, I want Chris and Isaiah, I want you guys share, and I don't care which one of you goes first. When I asked you that question and I said, well, what does it mean to be saved? And for clarification, I said, I'm a good person. I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't broken any rules. I give to people when I can. I do think, I do everything out of the goodness of my heart. I always try to help other people. I've never had any of these ill thoughts. Can I be saved? Like, I didn't feel like so what were your responses to that?
Well, first of all, I mean, just from my perspective, when you actually asked that question, I freaked out in my own mind, simply because, like Zay said, I mean, Tim, you've been my best friend for forever, and I have loved you that whole time, and always wanted to share my faith with you, and we have had lots of talks about it throughout our lifetime, and so when you when you asked that question, it kind of blew my mind a little bit. But going back to and in that, then when you asked that question, and I really, really wanted to explain salvation truthfully as possible.
And I appreciate it.
So, for me and what I have been taught and read and believe as being saved is the truth that God created us in His image to have a relationship with Him, and so our initial design was to be a kind of a reflection of God and a reflection of who He is. And so then, that is our understanding of us as humans. And then sin, what sin is anything that goes against the nature of God and who He is. And so, when we were created to be a reflection of Him, we were created with His nature. And then when we sin, we are going against God's nature, and so it separates us from Him. And that is, that's what the Bible teaches, is that sin separates us from the life of God, and the everlasting life that He has, and what He created us to be. And once that has entered us, we can't be in the right relationship with Him. We can't be in His presence with that sin in us.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing we can do to remove it, because God created us in His image. There's nothing we can do to like fix that and fix us back into
Right.
His image. We don't have that ability, and so, and God loves us so much that He wants us back in that relationship with Him. He wants to have the relationship with us that He created us for, and to share the love between us and Him. And so He sent Jesus to bridge that gap that we can't cross, to restore us to our original purpose, our original design. And so, as I said, there's nothing we can do. So we simply have to trust in Jesus and His sacrifice, His death and resurrection, that that is God's plan, and that God's plan is the truth for how to restore our relationship with Him. And honestly, I think I worded it a little bit better in my message back to you, but that
Was this the one that you got to respond on, or is this when you were driving and you were like, I can't respond, or was that another one?
Yeah, no, that's
was-
exactly
That
Yeah,
was the
you
one.
guys had,
We
you
had
guys had a
talked for a while.
like
So then, all right.
15
So Zay, you started first. So what was your? They were both of your answers, if I remember, were like very very similar, but like you could tell that it was part of you was being expressed in it. So like, what was your answer?
I think the way you had worded the question too played into it. I think I talked. You were asking a lot about like, what is the moment when it's true, and why do churches make a big deal about it and stuff like
Yes,
that.
and yeah, I did. All right. So for clarification, so I asked, is there a specific moment that has to occur, and does that moment have to be in front of other people, or can it be by yourselves? And to kind of give you like a post to jump off of, you and Chris mentioned that later said that moment occurs within you, and it is a moment, to kind of really shorten this, you can expand on it, where you are accepting, I cannot do this by myself. Jesus, God, I need you to help me, because I will, I can't do this myself.
I mean, between you two, you got it covered. Yeah.
There you have it, folks. All right, so that's it.
That's it. Wrap it up. No, I think that I agree with everything Chris said. So I'm just gonna build off of that and what you said, and just add to it in that I think you definitely, to define salvation as a gift, it's something you're accepting.
Mhm.
And Chris started talking about it's not something you can earn or do anything of your own to make happen, and it has to involve Jesus. There's a lot of people who will try to make it not involve Jesus for whatever reason. Actually, I know the reason, but that's a whole nother conversation. But the point is, like, he had to be a sacrifice because sin, the choice of sin brings death, so there has to be death. And he had to die in order to pay that price, and we are accepting the gift that he can now give because he's the only one who could. And there is a moment somewhere in time where that happens. Salvation, though, like many things with God, is a process. So the moment is included in a process, because I don't think anyone gets to the moment like this, right? You don't. Very seldom is someone convinced in one sentence, or one person telling them the gospel that, oh yeah, this is what I want. Usually there's been other influences in their life, or something has led up to the point where
Right.
that's happening.
their heart
What's
kind
the,
of
what's the
changes
expression?
over
Isn't
time.
the expression like we'll work through salvation with like fear and trembling? Isn't that the expression?
There is a verse in the Bible that says that, yes.
Yes,
Okay. Yeah.
Fear.
So like it just kind of get what you're saying. It's like it's not gonna be like a. This whole thing this is incredible, right? It's not gonna be like a switch
Yeah.
flips on.
And then
Yeah.
there's also a process that happens after. And so
Mhm.
I think everything is kind of equally important, but the moment is usually what is more externally noticeable, or
Yeah.
or able to be celebrated, and I think it should be
It's easier
celebrated.
to define to somebody too, of like, I said this prayer at this time. That was
Right.
the moment.
And
Mhm.
so I do think that that's something that churches make a big deal about, and I'm not opposed to that, and something that is to be celebrated and definitely part of it, but I don't think that is the only part. And so I think I talked just a little bit about that, and there are verses too that like define what salvation is, and kind of threw some of those at you as well.
Yeah. It was good. It was a good time, and kind of going off of that, like I definitely felt that I feel the working out now. I feel like that moment now, and I remember I went and met with the pastor, and we walked through the prayer, and then it was pretty good. I was ready to call you guys. I was ready to talk to Chris. Kind of tell him this thing. I was super excited. I felt this overwhelming, feeling that I hadn't had before. I had kind of had with the guidance of both of you. I'd had that moment after work one day where I just kind of said, like, dude, I know you've been helping me out, and I know I felt super great doing it, and I want more of it. Like, and I can't do it by myself, and I want to do it with you, and so I'm ready. Whatever it is, whatever it takes, I'm ready to do it, and let's do it. Let's go for it. And I like all my anxiety just dropped. I was just gone. Like I felt great. I felt great since then. I've grown closer to you guys. I've grown closer to my friend Robin at work, who is super excited about this. I told her about it, and she's really excited, and she's more than willing to come and have a conversation with us on this, which I think is really cool. And going along with that, just to kind of share news with you guys, on November 11th, I'm going to be getting baptized at my church, which is going to be really, really sweet. I'm going to video it so that I'm gonna video it. It's gonna go on Facebook. And another big moment, is kind of continuing the salvation thing. Before we sort of wrap it up here, is I finally told my parents, and I know that that's not when most people say I told my parents. You're thinking of something totally different. But like I finally told my parents, and my mom thought it was awesome. And actually, my mom's first comment was, "Do you still think I'm crazy that God talked to me during Dad's cancer?" And what she's referring to is a moment when, after my dad first got diagnosed with stomach cancer, my mom was just sitting in her bedroom, and God came to her and said, "You don't need to worry about this. He's going to be okay." And my mom came, when she saw us a couple weeks later, she came out and just told us. She said, "I'm not worried about this. Like, God came and told me." And Ryan and Corey thought she literally heard a voice, like, out loud, like Dad should have heard it, right? Like, they didn't really kind of grasp it. And even though I was kind of like, still, like, I had that doubting part of me, I knew what she meant. Mm-hmm. She had this overwhelming feeling out of nowhere, like this voice that kind of, like, she knew. And the reason that I understood it was because the second I heard my dad's diagnosis, I thought, from everything that I'd heard, that I was going to be like, game over. I don't know what to do. Right? And it was just like, no, like, there's no fear. There was no doubt. There was no nothing. It was just, hey, be strong. This is going to work. You're going to have to be the foundation for this whole thing. And so that was just like super cool. And then my mom goes, "You got to tell your dad." And then she says, "You're going to be surprised. Not he's going to be surprised. You are." So of course my dad picks the phone up. And he's like, "Hey buddy, how you doing?" I said, "Dad, I got to tell you something. Mom said I'm going to be surprised." And my dad goes, "Okay, fire away." And I was like, "Dad, 3 weeks ago, I've been going to church for 4 weeks now, and 3 weeks ago I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior." And my dad was like, "Dude, that's awesome. Like, it's so sweet. Like, I'm so glad to hear this." And that didn't really, like, surprise me, because I, like, through his treatments and stuff, he's had a shift in his belief. But it was just like a really weird silence after that of us both trying to figure out why my mom thought we were going to be surprised. But yeah, anyway, I digress. I don't want to continue rambling on about that, because I'm sure we're going to touch more in our lives from there. But just kind of getting that salvation and the misconceptions and things. And a lot of my experiences are where our future conversations are going to kind of go, because all of my walls that are being torn down, I want to know why they were there in the first place. So like, when I asked the question about salvation, well, I was under this, you would always mention to me, Chris, this, like, the sin of unbelief, right? Like, you're not there. And I always thought, like, this is my old perception. How ridiculous is it that I can just believe Jesus is the way and I can do all this outrageous stuff and it won't matter? And now I'm sitting here, like, shaking my head going, if you really believed that, you wouldn't do any of those things. And I'm just like, oh, duh. Like, why did I not think that the person would just not do all those horrible things, right? So some of it is gonna sound really outrageous, but I am glad to be getting to do this with you guys. I'm super excited. I'm glad that I have had each and every one of you. Wizards of the Cross for the GP. It was a good time. Before we bring up any like the next topic that we're gonna be talking about, do you guys have anything else you want to add to it? Well, actually, I do have the question. This is kind of how I guess we'll close this first one. What are you guys hoping to get out of this? What made you decide? Because when I brought this idea to you guys, when I looked at you and said, I want to do this show called The Doubting Tim Show, and I want to have these conversations once a week, what was your initial reaction? Why did you decide to do it? And what are you hoping it's going to get for yourself and give to the community? I don't care who goes first.
Well, for me, I was really excited about it when you said that. Just because for myself in the last few years, with doing the outdoor leadership job, coaching, and living with my changed perception of faith in God, and He's put me in this moment, and if I live as He's taught me to, I will do what He wants me to do. And so living in that perception, I have started to be a lot more comfortable, sharing faith. Growing up, I was never ashamed to be a Christian, because like I knew I lived that way, but I also, because of my fear and doubt in my own salvation, I didn't really want to share with people directly. because my thought was, how can I share with somebody else if I have all these doubts and fears about myself?
Mhm.
How can I tell them these things if I'm really not sure if this is all true? Um, and so, like I said, these last couple of years, that mindset has really changed in, you know, saying, I have this experience in my life, I have this knowledge that I really want to share with people. And I'm not a super outgoing person. I don't just, make friends at the drop of a hat. Um, so this is a way, I guess, to reach out to people through a more comfortable setting for me, in that I have a really close relationship with both of you guys. And so I can have really good, frank conversations without worrying that, I'm scaring away the person that I'm talking to.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that touches on a really good point of, not to cut Isaiah off, because I'll go to Isaiah after this, is kind of why I wanted to do it, right? I came from a place through you guys, I'm now here. And I'm able to live my life through Jesus. So what were the things that were holding me back? And how can I sort of speak frankly without this, like, you need to do these things or else, right? Like, I didn't like that. You guys never threw that down my throat, right? You loved me into his world, right? And that's what I'm hoping that I can do. And like I told you guys before, I can't afford to do missionary work. I'm stuck in graduate school. This is a way for me to reach out, develop a little bit of my own faith, and kind of reach out to everybody else in that community. So, Zay, what about you?
Well, I figured, we're three good-looking dudes. We should be on the internet.
Right? Which is good for me because you guys
Good
are both
everybody.
married. So, like, yeah, you whacked your camera pretty good. You guys are both married, so this is only good for me, right? It's getting my image out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree with everything you guys said. I, too, have, I guess I have more of an outlet already, so this is more of a fun thing for me. I really enjoy talking about God's word. I love both of you, and for me, it's a lot to do with community. It's a great way to have community, not just with you two, but again, like you said, to invite others into that. And I do think that regardless of where someone is, um, responding to a conversation is a lot easier than a lecture. And so I'm excited to be doing this as opposed to like recording a video on my own about like, these are my views. This is a unique way to kind of share views and share ideas and converse about them, even if we don't all agree 100% or have the exact same views. So I'm really just excited to do it.
I think it's going to be sweet. So
One other thing I did want to say, leading into this, I mean, that night when you called me, Tim, and told me that you had accepted Jesus, like, that was like literally one of the best nights of my life.
It was in fact the best night of my life.
But it's up there with, just below getting married and my daughter being born, and so.
As my friend Pastor Ryan said, it's my salvation and then cotton candy ice cream.
I was just super excited, and so, I mean, because truthfully, in my life, I had never personally led somebody to Christ in that way, really, in my life. I've been a good influence, I think, on people's lives, a good role model for people, but it's never been that personal connection. And so having that moment and realizing that, I can have that impact definitely made me more confident, more comfortable in doing this kind of thing.
Nice. That's pretty, yeah, I 100% agree. So just to kind of wrap it up, I think our next couple of conversations are going to wind up being just a little bit shorter. This one, obviously, a little bit longer just because we had, getting to know everybody and just kind of introducing ourselves and giving a background and that foundation. I think if you guys don't mind, we kind of hinted at it tonight and kind of talked about it, this transformation that occurred during salvation. And it's not exactly this topic. I'm just trying to think of like some of the topics that I previously discussed, but the doing actions for, right? Sort of like that judgment based, I can't remember the exact wording that you guys use, but essentially like the fear relationship of your, with God, or like the love relationship that you have. And are you doing something for something else, or are you doing it because? And so I think that if you guys are okay with it, I think that's kind of that straddling the line of like I don't know, Chris, how did you word it? You worded your previous one as like performance based, right? Is that what you said? So I think if you guys don't mind, next week we could talk about performance based work and essentially that kind of straddling that line of the word and why are we doing what we're doing, and now that we've been saved, kind of where do we go from there? Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. So, just real quick to give everybody an idea of how that's gonna work. The three of us are going to pick one or two verses that we find in our reading and in our research, and not discuss them with each other. Kind of bring them to the table, and then next week we're going to use those and see what did each of us find. Did we find the same things? Did we find different things? And it'll give you guys something to sort of respond to and sort of see if yours lines up. So, if you have some topics that you want to see us discuss, put them in the comments, right? If you like what we're doing, you can hit the subscribe button. We love doing this. I love these guys. I love you guys. I'm really excited to get this thing done. And if that's it, we'll see you guys next week.
All right. That sounds good.
Good night.
Good night.